All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live stream of reactionary opinions. Whiskey's ready to rock and roll. Cheers, Russell.
Happy Friday.
Friday, the 25th of September. And myself.
Yeah, if you're lucky, you got paid today, probably. It's quite a good chance.
Yeah.
If you still got a job after COVID-19.
Thank you, COVID. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
I guess we are definitely led. Don't do that, you.
Oh, okay.
But we're definitely led, I guess. Eh? What do you say, Russell? We are.
Yeah, we're led into poverty and unemployment. That's where we're led to. Wonderful.
But we're still led nonetheless. You know?
Yeah. Where you led to is irrelevant.
Yeah,
the fact is that you are led.
We are led. Yeah. Led into hell and back, but we are led.
That's all that matters is that you are led. and thank goodness we're not leading ourselves. Imagine how terrible that would be.
Yeah, jeez. I mean, could you ever think of ever leading yourself? I mean.
Yeah. Hey.
I mean, we do have a very competent billionaire leading us as well. You know what I mean? Like a really, really good guy leading us. Hello, Wizard. Good to have you here. Tell me, Wizard. We just wanted to find out, because this is kind of like a new thing that we're trying out. How's the sound? Is it coming through all right? Is there crackling? Are we clear before we go and jump into what we're here to talk about?
No, we haven't. It's a new thing, so we're not that sorted with our mic yet. But we want to know if anybody else has a problem with our sound.
Goodness me, this whiskey's terrible.
You know what these. About that we are late thing, these government, these bureaucrats,
What's 5.5? Is that good, or is that like 5.5 out of 10? Is it?
That was it.
I don't know. But quiet sometimes, but okay.
Right, as long as it's...
Well, we'll try and speak up a bit. I could maybe turn the mic up a little bit. Maybe that's a bit better. I don't know. Let us know. Yeah. The problem with those we are led things. What were you saying?
Yeah, a lot of the things with these bureaucrats that so-called govern us is that heaven forbid that people are allowed to make their own decisions. A lot of people say, a lot of these bureaucrats will say, well, then who governs? You know what I mean? Who governs?
Well, thanks, Wizard. Much better. Good, thanks. Well, Russell, the reality of it is, let's face the reality, is that this is why the We Are Led movement became such a big thing, because people really just want to be led.
Yeah, I think people have gotten too used to, I think worldwide, generally, people have had benefits for a long time of a strong administrative government. Now that the last, say, 5-10 years all over the world, in relative terms, people are seeing the administrative side of government and the real governing part of government, which is the provision and efficient services, they're actually in decline. Now it's actually a problem, Now it's all of a sudden people are saying, oh, well, these guys, and on top of that, they're just spending everybody's money left, right, and center, and running up taxes and running up the deficits that people's children and grandchildren will have to pay.
Yeah, this is the reality: is that our grandchildren will be paying off all these ridiculous loans from COVID. The strangest thing is that these loans get paid back by the citizens through taxes, through taxation.
The overspending.
Yeah, but it's the government that gets those loans. It's the most bizarre thing ever. I mean, I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, we jump into the topic of discussion for this evening. This is one that Russell and myself have often spoken about. Yeah, exactly. Wizard digging the hole deeper and deeper. It's a never-ending hole. They'll dig to China if they could. So the topic of discussion, which is if you're English speaking, you're a globalist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, that's a big, sweeping, broad statement, but there is truth to it in that English is pretty much the language of imperialism, or the language more accurately of universalism.
Yeah.
Right,
it started with the British Empire. Now it's an economic thing. I mean, the thing is, if you had to take the world's economy, the Anglosphere, obviously with the United States being the biggest one, a portion of that, is probably 35% of the world's total GDP. At least 35-40% of the whole GDP. You know, and I mean that's just America, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. If you start adding other countries that have English as an official language, it's probably going to be even more than that. So, and with the number of people that those economies reach, and the amount of people that that are part of that economy, you add in India, for instance, which is largely, to a large degree, although I don't know if English is an official language in India, I'm not quite sure, but it's a well-accessed language in India. There is 1 billion people already. So you get where I'm talking of in numbers of people and in economic terms, world GDP output. It's very much an international language, which, for somebody that is maybe has English as a second language, like if you're Indian or something and your English is very good, it's an advantage. But for people, and that's where I'm saying, essentially you're a globalist because it's this uniting factor. Language is a good way to kind of internationalize things, which is what is permanently trying to be done around the world, trying to internationalize things. I mean, COVID was internationalized.
Sure, it was totally.
The world economy is purposely internationalized. The culture that emanates from the Anglosphere, Hollywood and news and that sort of thing, and via that language is they're setting a new morality. All those types of internationalized things, it's all pushed via the English language, and that is why, if you're closely associated with English, if you operate within the Anglosphere, and particularly even if like myself and Scott, that have got English as our first language and all our ancestors spoke the language as well, we're basically globalists, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Again, yes, we might not be practicing globalists and members of the United Nations or whatever it is, but the English language is very much one of the driving forces behind universalism or globalism and stuff. So, the idea, I mean, like Russell mentioned, the language of trade and economics in the world right now is without doubt English.
Because in terms of numbers of people and economy, I mean, let's just take the Anglosphere, those countries that I mentioned, and then add India into it. That's 60% of the world's population. Well, not 60% of the world's population, but at least 50% to 60% of the world's GDP. You're really starting to, and that's just a handful of countries. Population-wise, that's probably about 20 to 30% of the world's population as well.
Yeah. So it's basically, the old. It started off basically as imperialism, but now it's sort of branched off onto this.
I'd call it internationalism now.
Internationalism,
or globalism.
So trying to paint everyone with the same brush, kind of.
Yeah. Let's no, it comes down to also that idea of no borders. It helps with breaking down borders, so to speak. No borders, no boundaries, all that sort of thing. You see it even in South Africa as well. The fact is that the English language is unfortunately the de facto official language of South Africa. The ANC government has made that pretty much clear.
Oh yeah.
So there is no. They're very good at this stuff. But they like to be able to say one thing and do another. On paper we've got 11 official languages, but in reality there is only one language essentially.
Well, I mean, you look at that, and then you look at the language statistics as well. I mean, isn't I don't know, I could be wrong, but I seem to remember reading somewhere that Afrikaans is actually the fastest growing language in South Africa.
Well, it's actually the one language that adds the most into. Yeah, it is actually.
It's like the only language that is actually increasing in popularity.
Yeah, it is, and it's the most diverse as well. You don't find many, like for instance, I think of all black Bantu speakers or Bantu people, not Bantu speakers, Bantu people in South Africa. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the 2011 census, 2% of all Bantu people in that census said that Afrikaans was their first language.
Yeah.
Now, 2% of 45 million people, that's a lot of people. There's a lot of black people that have got their first language is Afrikaans.
Yeah, well, what happened there, I think, is what the ANC has done is try to sort of basically universalize language in South Africa by pushing the English narrative, even though they might not seem that way, but they push the English language as the international language, or the official, unofficial, official language of South Africa, but kind of might have been taken by surprise by the growth of Afrikaans and its popularity in South Africa. You notice that when you see that there's not an abundance of a massive promotion of African cultures and stuff in South Africa. You don't see that.
Well, look what happened in South Africa. Look what happened in South Africa over Heritage Day. The president didn't make any announcements about celebrating. He didn't. I don't think he even needs a dress. I didn't watch it, and I stand mistaken, but I saw the headlines and what was written down and that sort of thing. And maybe the media didn't quote it, but in the articles, a couple of articles that I read, he didn't once encourage people like a Xhosa person or a Zulu person or something to tell their stories and write about their people's history and all that sort of thing. He didn't say anything like that.
There's nothing like that.
And he didn't encourage that at all. Basically, what he was saying is we're going to rename monuments and statues and towns. So basically, all that is basically an attempt to universalize South Africa. So that is the target. They don't care about any sort of heritage of South Africa. They don't care about the heritage of South Africa.
No, they don't. Which is also, I mean, you got to understand this when we talk about the New World Order and stuff. If you had to mention the Russell, if you had to mention like to Oaks 5-6 years ago, you said to them, the New World Order, they'd laugh at you. They think that you're talking about, the Illuminati and all these kind of things, and they'd laugh at you. Now it's all out in the open. It's common knowledge, and South Africa has aligned itself so well with Agenda 21 and Agenda
2030. Oh yeah, no. Look, anything that comes from the United Nations, it's South Africa signs on the dotted line. Anything that's to so-called get in with the big crowd or get in with the international crowd, they just do. Even if we can't actually fulfill the obligations and fulfill what we've written down, we just want to be part of the club, so we just go ahead.
Exactly. Hey, Dad's in the house. How's it, Robin McLaren? How's it going? Wizard says, call your conspiracy theorist. Yeah, that's what Oaks always. always
we are not conspiracy theorists. We only believe in theoretical conspiracies. Theoretical conspiracies.
Yeah, Russell came up with that one on our conspiracy. South Africa is a living conspiracy. But yeah, like South Africa is just sort of front and center when it comes to basically being the UN's bitch. That's
Yes.
pretty much all they are.
No.
They suffer from this what I like to call the little Jimmy syndrome.
What would be do anything to be in?
Yeah, just do anything to get attention. You know, little Jimmy. You know that guy at school that just wanted everyone's attention.
We eat worms.
That's South Africa.
Earthworms and all sorts of things, just to get anything for an attention.
Yeah, so Cyril is definitely owned by
he's missed the New World Order. Him and Thabo Mbeki especially.
I can't stand Cyril, man. I can't. I think he's, I mean, he's without a doubt worse than Jacob Zuma.
Much worse. Much worse.
Yeah, but what was it? So back to the language thing. You know, I think a lot of people underestimate the power of language, and leftists by by association also the UN obviously understands the power of language. And if you can get, and the reason why it's so powerful is it's not only the linguistic aspect of it, so words being powerful, those words arranged in certain ways and stuff are powerful and stuff, or you know, slogans and that sort of thing. Not only that, but the UN and stuff, they know that if they can get everyone speaking one language,
or as fewer languages as possible,
it's so much easier to come up with those slogans and those narratives.
Basically, I mean, let's just put it this way, all right? Let's look at the accessibility of the English language as a first and second language throughout the world, and then you look at Hollywood's ability to make movies and cinema and all those, and TV series and Netflix and all this thing. Although Netflix does a lot of other languages, like they do a lot of Indian TV and all that. I know that, okay. But what I'm getting at is, if you look at the amount of propaganda that they can spew out via a language.
Oh no, it's dominated by English.
Yeah,
dominated.
So the movie, that's why I actually like the idea that you've got like Bollywood is still so strong. You know, the Indians are still inwardly focused. I actually like that idea, and may long that be. I hope they really keep that as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, part of our what our YouTube channel is about, and us as reactionaries is about nationalism.
Yeah, no, look.
So the preservation of nationalism, preservation of your
nations and
your nation, your language, your culture, your heritage, all of that stuff is so vitally important to people. And if you water, the first thing that happens when you start watering down culture is people then, you know, once your culture gets watered down, the first thing that people start to do is, in a culture that's watered down, most people start speaking English. Funnily enough.
Correct. You see, I didn't. Okay, I don't want to. I think it's here in South Africa, for instance. It's not at a level that is. I wouldn't say it's not at extermination levels by any means, and it's still actually very strong. The language is still Afrikaans. The language is still very strong in South Africa. It's probably the strongest language in South Africa. Okay.
In the sense of like cultural foundations
and protection and usage and promotion and all that.
A lot of protectionism.
But it's self-protection, not state protection.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
The problem is as well is that I think a lot of Afrikaners or first language Afrikaans speakers have indulged in a lot of Anglicisms the last 20 years. And in a way, it's sad to see because it's weakened the overall Afrikaner culture, the Cape Coloured culture, all this sort of thing. So But it's not too like, I'm not saying that it's at drastically bad levels, but there has been like a kind of like a slight watering down. It's not drastic. It's not a drastic Anglicization thing. It's not drastic or anything, but it has happened.
Just
Okay?
gentle, just a gentle watering down
Just a gentle
of the culture.
watering down. I think it's going to. I think from in the future, it's probably going to reach a peak and then stop, and probably even reverse. I don't think it will. Afrikaans is going to be around for a very, very, very long time still. But so the ability of the English language to be a battering ram for the New World Order, what we're getting at there, and for globalism and for internationalizing everybody, getting everybody on board, and breaking down differences between people, it's the problem. So that's why our topic there, I think, is if you speak English, you are a globalist, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I hate it.
Whether you realize it or not, there's nothing much you can do about it. Just like a lot of the parts of the UN or the globalists' plan and agendas, there's a lot of stuff that you really can't do anything about.
And even the English language itself, the so-called Anglo culture, so to speak, in terms of how it's basically all English is now going at the moment. It's been watered down to simply a language.
Just a language, yeah.
And that's also a problem because it's only in places, and it's even there it's been watered down a lot because they're being forced to embrace all sorts of multiculturalism and nonsense and whatever. Like in the UK, for instance, it's still there. I mean, people still know about how England came to be and all this sort of thing, all that historical culture, and it's very, very rich. But it's just not promoted and pushed hard enough. I remember, maybe it's because I live in South Africa, because we're also trying to be internationalized and universalized in South Africa. So I can't speak about what it is like in the rest of the world, but even if you just take countries like America's historical and cultural background's under fire. UK's historical and cultural background is under fire. Like for instance, great American heroes are now basically persona non grata. I mean, like probably in terms of a leader and a brave man and a man of great integrity. For instance, a guy like General Robert E. Lee is now completely brushed aside.
Totally.
Basically they want to cancel.
They're
basically canceling all the historical nature of what used to be Anglo-centric culture, right? Almost as they're trying to say that English is just a language now, right? So there's no more Anglosphere heritage or anything, So there's no connection. All it is a language now.
Yeah, so that's but I mean that's exactly the agenda, isn't it?
No, that is, and the same thing will, and I think because English is such a universal, I hate that word, but such a universal language, it becomes difficult to push back against it because the tide is just so heavy. I think if you speak Polish or Hungarian or Russian or Greek or what other type of languages, Serbian or something like that, you're in a better position actually.
One of those
paradoxically.
One of those few languages that are not actually influenced by Anglo-Germanic kind of things, Latin Germanic kind of roots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, correct. To a certain extent,
strange
as well. I mean, French and Portuguese and Spanish are also kind of, but not nearly at the level of English.
Well, I mean, that like we said, it started with imperialism. So your sort of French, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, British, all of those imperialist powers, from 600-700 years ago, 500 years ago, 400 years ago, 300 years ago, all those imperialist powers, they were sort of the model of globalism. Because globalism is essentially it's imperialism, and basically what happened is, English prevailed as the imperialist power, and now has evolved into internationalism.
Yeah, obviously, Spanish and Portuguese and French are also very sort of, because of the empires that they had, their influence of their language was also quite widespread. So those languages are also used to an extent as a battering ram for the New World Order. But English I think, takes the cake by a good few lengths.
What does Tyrone say over there? He says, globalists, capitalists. I don't know what
Globalist capitalists. People don't speak correct English these days. It's so nice to hear when someone has a good command of the English.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. I mean, a lot of, and that comes with actually, even in places like that are English-speaking countries, because of the devolving of the English culture. It doesn't underpin the language well, so your average standard of English, even in English-speaking terms, is dropping.
Massively, yeah.
Massively,
yeah.
Because hey, English is just the language. It's not a.
There's no cultural attachment to it. So if there is a cultural attachment to it, you have some sort of pride in the language itself.
Correct.
So you want to.
You want to make it speak. You want to speak it properly.
Yeah, you want it to be. You want it to sound right. Yeah, there
it's
we
like,
go. So it's been diluted.
Yeah, it's like sometimes. like I actually consider my Afrikaans to be pretty good, or understanding of Afrikaans pretty good, until I read somebody who's writing a letter or writing an article or something in proper Afrikaans. I'm like, my head almost crushes.
I struggle. Like, if I had to read like an Afrikaans news article or something, I really struggle.
No, look, most Afrikaans, like a normal news article, I can take. But I remember once trying to read there was an article written. I think it was written by the Dutch Reformed Church or something, the NG Kerk. And I can't even remember what the topic was on. But yes, I struggled with it. I said, "Is my Afrikaans bad?"
It's just because you watered it down.
Correct, to my level.
And they're proud of their Afrikaans.
Exactly, that's the thing.
Culture.
Yeah, it's got a cultural attachment.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is, and I think also myself as a native English speaker who's essentially ethnically Anglo, all right, and culturally Anglo, I should actually also be a Nazi when it comes to the use of my language.
Yeah, you should be a bigot, Russell.
Yeah, I should be a complete language. Like, Dan Rood,
Dan
Rood. Welkom by die Praag YouTube kanaal. Welkom by die Praag YouTube kanaal.
Yeah, but that's lekker, bro. I don't have a problem with that. Like,
I don't have a problem with Dan Rood.
Oaks must do that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's really brilliant. So, Wizard says, give time, things are happening. I assume that he's talking about, that, Oaks will sort of wise up to what's going on and all of that. And I think if that's what you mean, Wizard, I think that's actually correct. People tend to underestimate people.
The powers that be get incredibly arrogant. They think that the average person in the street isn't paying attention or is asleep. Yes, they are asleep, but they're not asleep. They won't be asleep forever. I also think that this New World Order are actually on the run, so to speak, because I don't know. I can't tell if it's too late, but that's why they're so sensitive about banning people on Facebook and banning people on YouTube and banning people here. They are paranoid now, which is probably something that's actually quite a good thing.
Yeah. No, Wizard, we know that you were talking about Dan Ruitt's his command of Afrikaans. I know you made a comment earlier on before Tyrone's comment about just wait, things are changing now. But Dagbreker, how's it, bro? He says, I am Frisian
Of
of origin. We are practically genetically the same as the Saxons.
But it's still Germanic, right?
Yeah, it should be
Well, Saxons are Germanic. So.
Frisian. I don't know where that is. It's interesting. Cool, man. But yeah, the English. I don't know. Particularly, I mean, here's the thing: is I'm going on Tuesday. I'm going on Alex van Zyl on Conscious Characters show to talk about Anglo culture. I mean, it's a difficult thing to talk about in South Africa, in the South African context, because I don't know how you would really sort of frame Anglo culture in South Africa. I mean, obviously, there's the obvious sort of 1820 settlers and all of that sort of thing. But if you want to witness how English has been totally watered down in South Africa, just look at your average English guy. I mean, they've got no. I mean, I do have a reverence and a understanding of my family history and my culture and all of that from 1820 settlers and before. But the average English oak doesn't know, Russell.
Yeah, it's actually. I think it's just because all it needs to be is a couple of people to promote it a bit, and it'll be back. It doesn't take much.
Yeah,
you'll be surprised.
It is there.
You'll be surprised how it won't actually take much effort to rejuvenate it.
So many people think that like English culture in South Africa doesn't exist and stuff. That there isn't an English culture and stuff, which is nonsense. There is. There's definitely a rich and deep culture.
Well, look here in South Africa, for instance, let's just up until say the 1950s or so in South Africa, every type of institution was dominated by the English culture.
Yeah.
Up until about the 1950s, schools, all the prominent schools were the really good ones.
All the saints.
They were all English speaking. Almost all the universities were English speaking. Almost every sort of organizational think tank type of the development of your legal fraternity, all that sort of thing was all English in South Africa. You could say that was because of union days and all that sort of thing, but I think it also had to do with Afrikaans not being an official language and being a very new language as well. So it wasn't just that, but the fact is, right, that the culture of the Anglosphere is very much linked to administration, good bureaucracy, governance, common law.
That's an Anglo culture.
That's an Anglo culture.
It's not only a South African.
No, that's an Anglo culture across the board. So that's why that's what made the Anglosphere so successful. When people say, why are the white population of South Africa so successful relative to the rest of the population? It's simply because they carry the same culture as the Americans, the Australians, the Canadians, and the New Zealanders.
It's the Anglosphere.
It's the Anglosphere, Rhodesia. Wherever the English went, they were successful because of their culture. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Simple. They imparted the ideas of commerce, all the ideas of things like even today, basically our legal system still has a lot of English common law in it and all that sort of thing, but especially on the commercial side. But that was English culture. It was setting up of society, setting up of countries, setting up of things. It came from being imperialist, yes, but I still see that as a positive thing. if countries just adopted that for themselves, they would have been successful. And that was the whole idea behind Anglo culture, is to spread this sort of thing
The
around.
white man's burden.
Yeah, that's English culture, is the white man's burden. A lot of people don't understand that. Yeah, and I think, we can, if you follow, Scott will probably cover that on Ernst's show on Tuesday, which is very much the idea was always, the white man's burden was always to deliver.
Here's the thing. The unfortunate thing about the white man's burden is it never evolved, it never changed.
Yeah, it didn't. It basically became a. After the Second World War, it found itself cut off, and now without any type of enforcement. So what had happened is the world had changed so radically after the First and Second World Wars that there was no longer a place in the world for that type of policy or that type of output. And suddenly it was.
So what it lent itself to, what it actually lent itself to, is a sort of a sense of superiority and stuff amongst the English communities and all of that, which was, there was a time when that worked, but it never changed. It just never changed. It never evolved. That's the unfortunate thing. Check down Becker and Wizard talking about Brian, Russell. So I believe probably we won't be doing it tomorrow or the next weekend. I think probably the weekend after next weekend. Yeah, the weekend after next weekend, we will be Brian with Joe Emilio. That's if he doesn't ditch us again to go have Poiki. But he's going to be Brian with us here in the Bri room, so you guys definitely better come and check it out.
Yeah, it'll be set up lekker. We're gonna have even like a fireside chat.
Yeah. So basically, what we're going to do is we'll Bri, have a couple of drinks, and then we'll do a stream after that.
Hopefully it will be very funny, because hopefully we'll get some
cracker jokes,
some proper jokes out of Eric Estrada.
Eric Estrada, yeah.
Those of you who are too young enough to know, Eric Estrada was the guy from Chips, the Hispanic guy from Chips.
Joe knows who that is, bro. Joe's always saying, he's like, I get that all the time.
Yeah, I'm not saying Joe knows, but a lot of other people don't know who Eric Estrada is.
I'm sure the Oaks are watching. I'm sure that there's no one watching that's under the age of 30 or 35, I guess.
They didn't get to see good TV.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Wizard says, shit, flash from the past. Yeah, there we go. You see. So where are you from, Wizard? Are you from up north, or are you down here in the Western Cape? In God's country. Should I get us another whiskey there?
Yeah, I'll get us another whiskey.
Get us another whiskey there.
Where's JP De Silva? He's supposed to be talking to us here.
No, that's probably Martin. It's probably
He's going to those. He's been going to those massive protests in London, thousands of people, but you don't see it anywhere reported on the mainstream media.
No.
I mean, you see it on social media. It looks like, like tens of thousands of people, and the cops can't do anything. They're supposed to be social distancing and all sorts of nonsense. But no bars, no nothing. The press don't cover it at all. You just see the press covering ideas of, no, it's a second wave and all this type of thing.
Ridiculous.
Second wave for hospitals that are still empty.
Dalmas,
that's Mpumalanga, man. Isn't that where there's like Dalmas, Witbank, that area where there's Eskom coal-fired power stations or whatever?
Dalmas.
I think that's where it is.
Check Tyrone. I was born in Springs. Good lad. Yes, Tyrone. What does Dagbreker says over there? He says you have to watch the video by Daughter of Albion, rare footage of Africans building Britain. you'll tear up. People don't realize how difficult life was in Europe before colonialism. Yeah. Things were. Oh, there goes my microphone. Things were rough, for the oaks in Europe, all around Europe, very rough.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, it was better for our ancestors to leave London. My great-great-great-grandfather, who was a tailor in London, he was already 50 years old when he decided to move to South Africa, where there was nothing. You know, to move from the city of London to Algoa Bay, and later on to the Seerveld and Grahamstown. That takes some courage. He brought his whole family. He already had like 2 or 3 grown sons and what have you, and he brought them all out. But
yeah, at the age of 50, jump on a boat, take a boat trip that's going to take you like 4 months or something.
Sure, 3 months to get here.
Yeah.
You know, there must be pretty rough characters to be able to handle that. And he was still successful when he got here. And even it's quite an interesting story about how after Grahamstown was established, I think the house that Piet Retief built, I think, was eventually at some point, I think the owner after Piet Retief was somebody else, and then it was our great-great-grandfather. Our great-great once owned Piet Retief's house in Grahamstown.
There wasn't the carpenter though, or the tailor.
It was him.
Oh, wow.
He was really like 60 odd years old when he bought the place.
Good Lord. Yes.
I think he bought it in like 1838 or 1836, just after Piet Retief trekked.
Yeah, so Dagbreker says the African part is sarcastic. Yeah, I thought as much. He says they were black from coal mining. Yeah, look, the idea that but here's the thing: is one thing that colonialists did enjoy was cheap labor, and it was unfortunate that is something that they did enjoy. And
the cotton mills of India, the cotton mills of Asia,
yeah,
created with British money but used for the destruction of Lancashire and Yorkshire.
Yeah. So they did enjoy that a bit, but you know, the idea that that Europe's riches were plundered from Africa and stuff is just utter nonsense. They, you know, sure, Africa was full of resources and stuff, but resources meant nothing in Africa. You know, that's the thing. Like,
resources never mean anything. You go wherever you go, resources mean nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, what resources does Singapore have?
How's it, Tinus? Sorry, how's it, Tinus? Welcome. Says he's missed most of the stream. Doesn't matter. Hang out with us.
Yeah, okay, Tinus, you missed a lot because we basically talking about how English language is used by the internationalists to oppress people.
Oh, there's Joe. Joe's there. Joe's in the house. What's up, Joe? Hey, Joe. I don't know if it's this. It's okay. So it's not next Saturday. It's not tomorrow. Are we buying the Saturday after next Saturday? Let us know, because I'm so excited about this stream, bro. We want to do this braai stream. We'll braai, but we'll put the camera on the other side of the room so we can sit around the braai fire and talk nonsense and all of that. Look at this oak, huh? Look at him, Joe. It's Scott speaking. When are we braaiing? You're gonna say, oh, but the weekend after next weekend, I have to go for a picnic.
Yeah, eventually, we're gonna make you calling us, you ditching us.
Joe, I'll tell you what, Joe. Joe, I'll tell you what, bro. I think you need to check your messenger messages. What? Did we agree or didn't we? I thought we did agree. What is going on here? Joe, what are you doing to me?
Did you get things wrong here?
I'm pretty sure I got things right. Unless is messing with me. So the 7th, yeah, that's it, Joe. No, not the 17th. It's bloody miles away.
Hey, we'll wait until, I don't mind. The 17th can work.
I don't mind. That's far.
Yeah, the 17th, hey, listen, that's, I don't know, as long as it happens, I don't mind.
Okay, so the 17th, that's literally in a month's time. No, not quite.
Yeah, in 3 weeks' time.
3 weeks' time. Okay.
That's good enough for me. As long as it happens, it's okay.
I'm okay with that. But we actually wanted you to fly next weekend, but you have to go to a Poiki, and I don't know. I said, I don't think we messaged each other. I don't think we confirmed the date.
Well, okay. Well,
it's fine.
But now it's public. You see, he's committed publicly, so we're now all on the line.
Oh no, Joe, that was on Beth's stream, bro. I forgot about that. Yeah, we had a chat. I called him a lolbert on and then Beth went and Googled what a lolbert was, and Joe was like so offended by it.
A fellow truth community person didn't know what lolbert was.
Yeah, no, Joe's not really a lolbert. He's not really a lolbert.
Beth didn't know what lolbert was.
Yeah. Joe, no worries, bro. We can do the 17th if that's okay. I think that Oaks are quite stoked about that. But I know you were kidding. It's fine. You're a comedian. You're supposed to kid all the time. So, but yeah, 17th. I think we'll do that, and we can have some whiskeys. I will make, Joe. What I will make. I will make a picanha. I don't know if you've ever had a picanha, but it's like one of the best steaks you'll ever have. It's just, I don't know, it's melt in your mouth kind of stuff. Russell will vouch for that.
That's good. It's good. It's good. But yeah, I mean, I think back to our original sort of topic about sorting out some administration there. But yeah, look, I think there has been enough. Basically, what I'm getting at, I'm tired of the internationalism now, and I think a lot of people, in actual fact, from a cultural point of view, myself and the language that I speak, people like myself are actually scored in a sense. Even though that we have actually benefited the most from it, okay, in the economic sense, right? We've got the world as our oyster more than, say, somebody that speaks Hungarian,
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so the opposite is that side to it, but I would prefer, we've had enough internationalism now. I think we need to now try and retreat into our lagers.
Yeah, well, I mean, but Russell, what happened in all the Anglospheres, there's Ferran. Just got in Cyprus. You're in Cyprus, Ferran. What are you doing there? I thought you were in Spain. He's a funny guy, this Ferran. You remember Ferran?
Yeah, Ferran. Yeah, the time he went that time I met him at that party, rocked up with his suitcase and everything to catch a flight at 4 o'clock the next morning.
To catch his flight at 4 o'clock the next morning.
Just going straight to the party to catch his flight.
Straight from the party to the airport. Yeah. Anyway, so I think I lost my train of thought there, Ferran.
We're talking about we've had enough internationalism.
Yeah. No, but I was going to say something specific with regards to. It doesn't matter. It'll come to me. Languages. Like I love languages. I mean, I speak okay Spanish. Ferran will tell you. I can have a reasonable conversation in Spanish, only because my wife is Peruvian. It's not because of something that I just learned for fun. But that's also an important aspect of languages. Is you learn languages to achieve something. You don't just learn language for fun.
Mm.
You learn languages to gain something. But yeah, the Hungarian and the sort of Polish and those languages. If you live in Poland or whatever it is and you speak English and stuff, you are, I suppose, I know quite a few Polish people, but they do speak English. But I don't know exactly what it's like in Poland. But I'd assume that English is not
Even
an
if you go
official
to
language.
even if you go to a country like Russia, for instance, I mean, a friend of mine's brother is playing. Actually, believe it or not, he's playing pro rugby. Believe it or not, in Russia, and like the word that I hear from there is that if you are in the commercial business sphere and you've got a reasonable command of, you've learned a reasonable amount of Russian and you can speak English at the same time, you basically there's a lineup of companies wanting to hire you. You know, it's quite scary. It's quite scary. You might not even be that good at your actual job, but the fact is that you can communicate in Russian and English is quite something.
You become a commodity.
Very much so, yeah.
It's the same as my wife here in Peru, here in South Africa, who speaks English and Spanish. She's a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But obviously, the English thing being the primary aspect, you know, she wouldn't have been hired if she wasn't able to speak English.
Correct.
You see, that's the whole thing. It's like the gateway. It's like you have to be able to speak English. Can you speak other languages? Sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and generally, I mean, if you look, like I say, there's companies willing to hire you. I mean, let's take certain countries are almost impenetrable in terms of culture and everything, simply because of their language. Take a country like Hungary, for instance. How do you get into that culture? Because the country only speaks 98% Hungarian. The other 2% is German. You know, so what do you do? And you must remember, Hungarian is its own root language. It's like Greek.
Yeah, it is.
So it's not at all like, it's not like it's related in
it's
anything.
It's not a Latin-based language or anything.
So it's really a struggle. And in that sense, they can maintain their culture quite well because they don't have this oppressive internationalism over them the whole time. It's very difficult to subvert the culture there.
Yeah, those kind of cultures and those kind of countries, hey, the languages and the ideas that they or the way that they're able to preserve their culture through, and the only way that they're actually able to do that is through their language. Interestingly enough,
because they're in Europe, they're in the middle of Europe. They're basically in Central Europe. They've got geographically, they've got. I mean, you're close to Austria, you're close to Germany, you're close to Greece, you're close to just about.
I remembered now what I wanted to say. You know, English language has become universal. So there's certain cultural aspects of English now that are almost identical in any Anglosphere country that never used to be that way. So, for example, now if I go to New Zealand, I will probably fit in quite easily there. Go to Australia, fit in quite easily. You know, the United States, been there many times, fit in quite easily. Obviously, Mud Island, fit in there quite easily. You know what I mean? But there are aspects of each of those Anglosphere countries where culture has grown out of those things and has become unique. Okay, but there is the only thing that makes it that I can fit in with those other countries is the fact that I speak English.
And you've got a shared heritage as well. You see, if you think about it as well, let's just take the 20th century, the Anglosphere. They're all fought in the same wars. I'm just using a once-off thing.
Yes.
Played sport against each other. So you're already building, share the same language. When it comes to movies and actors and famous people, you share the same people, so that you're starting to build common ground the whole time with things. So when in the English speaking world, there's not look. I know that the British have their BAFTA, but it's not even like half the size of the prominence as the Oscars, for instance.
Yeah. So certain aspects or certain cultures within the Anglosphere took precedent, or dominated other aspects of the Anglo.
Yeah, the universal aspect dominated the local aspect.
Oh yeah, definitely. But there are still to this day certain local aspects of all the Anglosphere's different cultures.
It's like so-called Anglosphere culture it's got the universal and the specific. They've got their universal aspects, and then they do have specific aspects. But I think the dominant force is the universal aspects.
Definitely. So the wizard says, I speak English, Afrikaans, Zulu, and Portuguese. Yeah, that's quite something.
You must be from Northern Natal then.
Are you originally from Northern Natal, living up in there where the oaks can fight?
Yeah, there the oaks. He's probably from Vryheid or something.
Where the oaks can really fight.
Vryheid.
But Tina says, what are your opinions on bringing back Latin in schools or teaching it to your children? I, for one, think it should be compulsory for every human being to at least learn the common Latin phrases and understand their meaning. Look, I know Latin was a language. My mother took Latin in school. It was taught probably up until the late 60s,
early 70s,
early 70s in schools and stuff. I'm
even
not so sure.
Even South Africa, South African English-speaking schools had Latin until about probably the early 70s, around there somewhere, at least.
So, well, I mean, what's my opinion on it? Well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned learn the common Latin phrases and stuff and understand them. So, Latin as a language, and this is the only reason why I would say it would be possibly beneficial for people to understand the language, or at least know the language Latin. A lot of people don't. A lot of people would argue with me, but English is definitely a Latin Germanic language. There's no getting around that. I mean, it's quite clear in a lot of the words. But the reason why it's so important is that there are certain words and that sort of thing. And I think Latin, understanding and having a good command of the language, helps you understand in more detail the power behind those common phrases in those languages that, like, for example, Latin phrases can be found, I mean, obviously Spanish, Italian, French, English, all of those languages.
Basically, in the early days of people who studied law, you had to take Latin. Because, especially in South Africa, because we had a lot of what they called Roman Dutch law.
Yeah.
So, in South Africa, a lot of your legal phrases and all that sort of thing, we basically use. So, I think Latin was used as a basis to convey ideas, right? Because the sciences and the legal and science fraternities were full of Latin. So I think possibly to get the culture strong as to where your thoughts and ideas come from, it could be a good idea to institute Latin.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean,
I don't have an opinion. I don't have a problem with it either.
I would say, I mean, like, just to give you an example, a prime example is myself when I was learning to speak Spanish. How many of the now the way that they use Latin words in context versus the way that it's used in English differ quite substantially. and it helped me get a a different view or different understanding of how those words can and are used in conversation and all of that. And look, Dennis, I haven't really thought about making Latin or teaching your kids Latin and stuff. But now that you mention it, I guess I can see understand your point.
I don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem with it either.
It's a good way to convey ideas as to where they actually originally came from, so that they can maintain their meaning. They don't get redefined. You know what I mean? So that's why it's a good thing to learn Latin, because we all know how they redefine words in the modern English situation. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's also a very good point, Russell, is that language, if you understand the root of the language, it's very difficult for language to get abused.
Correct.
And changed and subverted and all of that.
Correct.
That
if you disconnect it from the language from its original roots and that sort of thing, you can subvert it.
So, Dennis, that's actually a lot more of an interesting comment than I thought it would be. Actually,
yeah, it's turned out to get you thinking a little bit more.
Going into that, it's actually a very good point. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. The wizard says Springs was diverse.
Yeah.
All came here for the mining.
Sure. Mozambican Portuguese and Angolan Portuguese.
Zulu as well. I guess Zulu, probably for the labor, for the size,
definitely.
The sheer size of the Zulus, I guess. Careful, bro.
I think the Zulus basically forced themselves on that area.
Yeah, the Zulus
became the dominant force.
Yeah, I guess when you want oaks to be miners and stuff, you want some big oaks. So the Zulu oaks are the Zulu oaks can provide. When it comes to size and beefiness and all of that. But yeah, I'd say that is the crux of our chat.
Something to think about. Language is not simply a language. The way it's used and the way it's promoted is extremely important. So never undermine language. Conserve it. It doesn't just exist on its own. It came from a particular place. It has a specific purpose, and it can be used positively or abused.
Absolutely. So next week, guys, next week Friday, we will be having our good friend Eustace on the show to talk about Agenda 21
and Agenda 2030.
Yeah. And what's going on?
Ties in pretty much what we're talking about tonight, very much so. Not specifically, but in a general sense,
Yeah. So I mean, look, it's becoming more and more evident and more obvious if you just sort of open your eyes. You don't really have to, you don't even have to research this stuff. It's so blatant in your face at this point. That the whole that there's definitely a agenda that's being pushed by the United Nations and the World Health Organization and all of these guys, and it's just becoming so much more obvious. So it's unavoidable. But we want to talk in a little bit more detail to Eustace about what Agenda 21 is about and what Agenda 2030 is all about. But we'll have him on next week, Friday. We'll have him on. But Eustace is a good guy. Those of you, I mean, look, Oaks, myself and Russell, we do this for fun. We don't do this professionally or anything. We do this because we enjoy it. But there's a lot of YouTubers out there that need your assistance and stuff like Eustace. So if you're listening and you're not subscribed to his channel, go and subscribe to his channel. He does some seriously awesome content.
Nice.
I mean, production quality is top notch.
He's a fellow member of the online truth community in South Africa.
Yeah. So go and check his channel out. Go and support the guy. Donate money to him. Do whatever you need to do. But go and support the guy. He needs it. But thank you so much for listening, guys. It's been a really awesome chat. We've got some whiskeys. Myself and Russell will probably have a couple more whiskeys. Thanks, Wizard. Thanks, Pa. Thanks, Tennis. Thanks, Dagbreker, and all of those oaks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Our loyal regulars and all of that. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Remember to stay reactionary out there because
God wills it.
God wills it.